Hi guys, Alex here. Today I would like to talk about how I would go about finding a job in architecture industry. This is not a video about how to make your CV or portfolio. I think there's a lot of resources out there on this subject that you can research, but the video is really intended to give you some actionable tactics and principles that I think are going to give you a competitive edge. So I think when it comes down to job seeking, architecture students do really poorly. They don't know how to go about looking for a job, and they do not know how to self-promote. The common job hunting strategy often is to rely on a hope to, send out 100 emails to different architectural practices in the hope that some of them are going to respond. This is not a great approach because it relies on a luck factor. So instead, I would like to propose 3 different approaches that I think are going to make your chances of landing a job much higher. Before we get into the strategies, I would like to highlight that the main principle behind them is that you always want to stand out from the crowd. Because if you do not stand out, you are going to be competing on either the quality of work, and unfortunately there's always somebody who can do work better than you, and the second thing is that you would be competing on the price, and again there's always somebody who can do or is willing to do a job cheaper than you would. So instead, you really want to have a competitive edge by being different from everybody else. And one way to do that is by employing different job application strategies. So the first way to land a job is to use your connections within your network, like your friends, colleagues, or tutors that could recommend you to somebody who is hiring. And this is a very effective strategy because it relies on the fact that that people trust you, that friends of the friends that you're applying to trust them, and so you can leverage that trust and get your foot in the door. I personally landed 2 job opportunities like that, both through my tutors. And so I have a first-hand experience in that and how effective that is. The second approach, if you don't have connections you can leverage to your advantage, is that you may want to consider researching which firms are hiring. Now, the common way people do this is they find a job listing and then they apply for it. The problem with this approach is that there's at least 10 to 20 other people who are looking and applying for the same position. So again, you're effectively competing against one another. So the quicker and more effective way, I think, is to try and tap into the hidden job market by picking up the phone and trying to call different practices to see if they're hiring or not. And this is a good tactic because of 2 reasons. One, you'll instantly know if the firm you're calling is hiring or not. And 2, if they do hire, then you've already established a verbal connection with them, and you've made yourself different from other people that are applying by just simply emailing their CVs over, and thus you are standing out from the crowd. So prior to choosing my current employer, I got offered 3 places just by calling around. So the way I did that was I created a list of about 100 practices here in Glasgow where I live. I then put them all in a Google sheet, and then I just started calling all of them, and every time I called them I would record the outcome of that conversation, and it either was positive or in most cases they weren't hiring, but I recorded that anyway so I could score out all the practices that are not hiring. And then what I did is I would send them my CV and I would follow up within a week. And the good thing about following up after you send your CV is that it demonstrates to the practice that you're a persistent kind of person, which is valuable, and 2, it demonstrates that you're interested in the position. So if you suddenly disappear from the horizon and don't keep in touch with the practice, you basically send the wrong message to them. The last option you may want to consider, or at least think about, is to try to make it on your own. I'm not saying that this is something that's easy, but it is certainly within the reach of many of us these days. And this is a path that's different to common wisdom, which is that you finish your studies and you find a good, secure job. Instead of that, you're actually relying on yourself to go out there and make it on your own. I would say that if you don't have a business idea or a product that you can sell at the moment, you can start out by building your online presence, by putting out your work into the different social medias and start thinking about growing your audience. Because if you have an audience online through, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, if you have a following there, it's much easier to sell product, a service, or something else. If you have a fan base, if you have a following, even if the people who are following you don't buy directly, they might be able to recommend you to other people that might be interested in your product or service. If you'd like to get a more in-depth understanding about the ways how to get noticed, I would recommend 2 resources. The first one is a blog post called Step to Getting What You Want Without Formal Credentials, which is basically a post about building your reputation online and how you can do that with a kind of a step-by-step guide. And then the second resource I would recommend is a book. It's called Don't Get a Job, Make a Job. And I think it's written by an architect, or it's certainly written about architects who, after graduating, they didn't just go out, started looking for a job. They created their own business or service that they could then leverage to get noticed, get paid for. So it's an interesting read if you want to get more practical examples. So to wrap up, the 3 tactics that we covered in this video were: number 1, getting jobs through connections. Number 2 was figuring out who is hiring. And lastly, number 3 was to try and to make it on your own. Remember, in all of these 3 instances, your objective is to try and stand out. There's no reason to do it otherwise, because you're either going to be competing on the price or the quality of work, and that's a difficult way to go about when you are applying for a job. So let me know in the comments if you found this video useful. I wish you good luck in looking and applying for a job. I really hope you're gonna make it.